You couldn't get a prettier morning in Port Douglas than last Thursday. But for notorious conman Peter Foster, it was a case of paradise 1 minute, purgatory the next. On 4 Mile Beach, 2 Queensland police officers dressed as joggers crash tackle Foster into the golden sand to arrest him on multiple fraud and money laundering charges.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And that dramatic seaside arrest was not from a glossy TV drama, but from a real-life sting captured from every angle by 9 60 Minutes. With cameras in the bushes, on the beach, and even flying through the air when Peter Foster hit the sand.
This arrest marks another sensational chapter in the life and crimes of 57-year-old Peter Clarence Foster.
There was no mercy from the Queensland cops who jumped him, and none from Carl Stefanovic on 60 Minutes, who told us.
You must realise you're a pretty despicable person when every mention of your name is preceded by the word con man.
And we've got no sympathy for a man with a long track record. But how did the cameras manage to be in the right place at the right time with such a stunning made-for-TV backdrop? The answer? Meet the crack PI that orchestrated the whole show.
Ken, true to word, you got your man.
We got him this morning in spectacular style, as anyone would expect with Peter Foster.
Ken Gamble is a licensed investigator who's been on Peter Foster's trail for years. And he and Carl also go back to this 60 Minutes story in June.
He has the ability to read people very well. He's a confidence trickster, so he will read your weaknesses very, very quickly. You know, he's a career con man.
Is he good at it?
He's very good at it.
Is he the best at it?
He's certainly the best one that I've ever come across.
And when police closed in on Foster this month, Gamble was ready with a slick operation of his own. On the beach with his own camera operator, capturing every moment. Within an hour of the arrest, Gamble's firm had even sent out a press release and tweeted photos to news organisations, complete with a giant watermark to plug his firm. And amazingly, Gamble was not the only one on the beach. As you can see from Ken's footage, another cameraman and boom operator pounced on the melee. They were freelance operators hired by Nine and coordinated by Ken to join the sting. And the drone shot? That was from a third crew for a US production company, making a doco on Gamble, which also ended up with Nine. So while other networks were forced to run Ken's watermarked photos, Nine had the dramatic footage all to itself on Sunday.
Why are we doing it like this? Why aren't we doing it in a civilised manner?
You know why?
No, I don't.
Well, you got a history of running away, Peter, so police have got to just do their job.
Ken told us Nine did not pay him to tag along, and he wouldn't have invited the other crews if police had told him not to.
As a courtesy, I said to them, I may have some media with me. They said to me, as long as you stay out of the way, that's up to you. If they have their noses out of joint, I think that's unfair and unjustified.
But it seems police noses were out of joint. The Queensland cops had no idea the arrest would turn into a media show. While New South Wales police told us
the attendance of the media is now subject to an internal investigation.
One police source told us investigators are livid at the spectacle. But to be fair, tipping off the media to a dramatic arrest or filming it themselves is what police often do, although not with those Hollywood production values. But now, to a key battle that could be of major importance to the media, a battle to get digital giants like Facebook and Google to put some of their billions back into the news industry.
In a move that's angered the likes of Google and Facebook, a new mandatory code of conduct is set to be introduced to compensate journalists for their work.
It's now 1 month since the government and ACCC announced a plan to force Google and Facebook to pay commercial news organisations for cannibalising their stories. And Google has been fighting back hard.
Google is being accused of deliberately frightening Australians to protect its massive profits.
With an open letter claiming a planned bargaining code with news companies would force it to provide Australians a dramatically worse Google search and YouTube and put its free services at risk.
So why the full frontal attack? Because this is crunch time and the world is watching. For years, legacy media has been helpless as ad revenue flowed from them to the digital giants, bringing job cuts and media closures across the nation. And this could be the best chance we'll see to turn the tide.
Australia's online advertising market is worth a whopping $9 billion a year. Out of every $100 spent, $47 goes to Google, $24 to Facebook and $29 to other participants.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says the mandatory code, which could be law by the end of the year, is designed
to ensure a fair go for Australian news media businesses, and that when they generate original content, that they are fairly paid for it.
It's not often the government, the regulator and the commercial media are all on the same side. But with the world watching, local journalists are cheering.
These monopolistic and opaque ad tech companies have stolen our work. I work in this industry that's been utterly decimated by COVID, and before it, there's friends of mine who have lost their jobs.
This is all about redressing the balance, making sure content providers are paid fairly for what they do, and in the end protecting jobs in the news media.
I think this is the right move by the government and by the authorities, and Google just has to bite the bullet and pay up.
Exactly how that will be achieved is not yet clear, but the basic idea is to force Google and Facebook into a room with traditional media publishers to hammer out a payment deal. And if they can't work it out in 3 months, they go to an arbitrator who will make a binding decision. It's a grand idea and centres on a simple question: what is the value of news for platforms like Google and Facebook? As Communications Minister Paul Fletcher explained,
it might be when you type into the Google search engine COVID-19 in Melbourne, that's almost certainly going to take you to a news story on a website of Nine Entertainment Limited or Herald Sun. And the question is, what is fair payment to the news organisations that have invested money, that have employed the journalists, that have done the work to produce those stories, which are then part of the reason why people are going to Facebook and Google, why those eyeballs are attracted, and why Facebook and Google are so successful in selling advertising because of those eyeballs.
It's set to be a monumental showdown, and it's already playing out on the front pages.
Search and destroy.
But putting aside the media's barracking, the move to slug the tech giants is not without criticism. As Harvard's Nieman Lab explained in June,
companies that have been out-competed in their core business of selling advertising are using their political heft to advocate a redistribution of wealth from the winners.
Or as tech billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes put it on Twitter,
should Netflix be forced to pay for reduced cable bills, for lower popcorn revenues at movie theatres?
Financial publisher Bloomberg is also critical, calling the government's big stick approach hopelessly misguided and counterproductive. And for its part, Google says the proposed code is unworkable and carries enormous and unreasonable demands. It also argues it's the news media that needs Google, not the other way round. As Managing Director Melanie Silver explained in a rare interview,
I just point to the fact that we send billions of clicks every year for free to news media businesses that enable them to monetise their content and drive subscriptions.
But despite the pushback, it looks like money will change hands. And the key question is, how much? Earlier this year, News Corp's Michael Miller reached for the sky, suggesting Google and Facebook should pay as much as $1 billion for news content per annum, while Nine Entertainment suggested $600 million. They are eye-watering amounts, and several ballparks away from what Google told MediaWatch it earns from news.
Last year, Google made approximately 10 million Australian dollars in revenue, not profit, from clicks on ads against possible news-related queries in Australia. And just over a total of 1% of all searches on Google were news-related.
So you can see why the showdown is set to get ugly. And what are the chances of the old media winning big? Writing in The Australian, Alan Kohler warned against hopes that diverting profits from the tech giants could bail out struggling media companies.
Perhaps a few pennies will find their way into the bowls of the publishers sitting cross-legged on the footpath, but that's all.
Meantime, Google's call to arms has gone out on its YouTube platform, where some independent new media producers are now railing against the government's mandatory code.
If this bill was to pass, and it might only be a month away, this would no longer be our YouTube. Even the best, most talented, most entertaining or most enlightened individuals would not get the opportunity to rise to the top, and would instead be strategically buried under content from media organisations.
Like the rest of the world, we'll all be watching. But now, to Talkback Radio, where you never know who will be listening. Last Thursday, ABC Melbourne's Virginia Trioli shared some blunt viewer feedback on one of her finance guests.
More on Marcus Padley on text. Oh dear, it never ends. Thank goodness I don't have to listen to that arrogant Marcus Padley today. What has happened to the ABC? It's like Twiggy doing the talk. Shame on you, Ita.
Ita being Ita Buttrose, chair of the ABC, who, according to some ABC watchers, controls everything we do. But as Virginia reminded her listeners,
I am really going to have to address this ITA issue. If the phone ever rang for me from Ita Buttrose, I think I'd fall off my chair.
well, we hope Virginia was strapped in because later that morning...
Line 2, who is it?
Good morning, Virginia. This is Ita Buttrose. I believe you said you'd fall off your chair if I rang. So I thought it might be fun to see you fall off your chair.
Hang on, let me just fall off my chair.
But never fear, ABC lovers. Ita assured Virginia she is a hands-off boss.
The chair of the ABC has nothing to do with the editorial content, and all of our announcers and broadcasters run their own race.
Straight from the horse's mouth, Ita does not tell ABC presenters what to say. But she is always tuned in. And so this Daily Mail headline must have come as quite a shock.
ABC star 42 is jailed for raping 2 male escorts he flew in for boozy hotel romps.
That is terrible. So, who is the ABC star? A journalist, presenter, producer? Well, none of the above, because underneath the salacious headline, the Mail revealed it was...
an Australian actor who featured in the hit ABC political drama Total Control.
And how much of a starring role did actor Christian Minot play in the 6-part ABC drama? Well, let's just say he did not work overtime. Minot appeared once, with his hands and briefcase featuring more often than his face. And if you spin to the credits, you'll see he's listed 33rd as the document guard. So, as far as beat-ups go, the Daily Mail wins again. And of course, it wasn't original either. It was a rewrite of this ABC story by Selby Stewart, who was in the ACT Supreme Court to cover the sentencing. And while the Mail does link back to the ABC story, it's a pity it didn't also pinch the ABC headline, which must have been too accurate for its liking. And finally, to one of the buzzwords of 2020.
Are there learnings from the plans we put in place? Absolutely.
There were learnings. I think there have been a lot of learnings since then.
Sorry, does the New South Wales Health Minister mean lessons? No, he does not.
There are learnings every day by New South Wales Health, and those learnings have continued to enable us to get to where we've got today.
Good to know. And the state's Chief Health Officer, Dr Kerry Chant, was on board with that.
We have reflected the learnings, and some of the learnings is, again, discussing some of the learnings.
And rest assured, it seems the yearning for learnings is catching on from journalists.
There are learnings, I think.
Are there any learnings from what has happened in Victoria so far?
You say there are learnings, doesn't look like the lessons were learned.
To footy coaches.
I've taken away a lot of learnings. They'll be better for the experience.
And big business.
We want to take the learnings that we've had through COVID as well, and once we're through the pandemic, make sure that we embed those learnings.
So, where do all those learnings come from? Well, as far as we can tell, one of the biggest fans is the Prime Minister.
The key findings and learnings. There has been some humble learnings. I think the partnership is the product of the learnings, the humble learnings that have been necessary.
We've counted the PM using the term multiple times this year, along with some of his ministers. And last week in Question Time, he was at it again.
Addresses the learnings that come from dealing with a 1 in 100 years pandemic.
And given the pandemic is far from over, we assume there will be many more learnings to come. That's all from us tonight. There's more on our website, including a statement from Google. And don't forget, Media Bites every Thursday on your favourite social media platform. But for now, until next week, goodbye.